Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into the psychological supernatural 2025 horror movie from the YouTubers come filmmakers, the Phillopou brothers, who previously were responsible for the very effective and successful Talk to Me released in 2022. We'll be breaking down the plot and story beats. I know I'm very late in reviewing this, but it's been a film I've been extremely excited to see and have multiple times now. It's one of my favourite horror movies of the last year, and with contenders like these, Bring Her Back still manages to shine as an incredible standout piece of cinema and my own personal favourite. Please be warned, there will be heavy spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen the movie, go check that out first. The film opens with footage of an occult ritual being recorded on a camcorder. Guessing from the language being spoken or the text on screen, it's of Russian origin. It's extremely dark and disturbing, and actually opens on an image I can't show on YouTube and wouldn't even want to. It almost made me gasp in disbelief that they were even allowed to open the film with this. A woman is prepared to be hung by a noose while another girl is kneeling in a white ring of some kind of white residue, while another man places his hand atop of her head. The whole videotape is actually a special feature on the DVD, and I had to turn it off about halfway through as it felt so real, it was really getting under my skin. The title card also has some foreshadowing, as it has the sound of being submerged underwater behind it and some faint struggling. We then meet a teenage girl named Piper, played by Sora Wong in her first ever role. A young visually impaired girl who is waiting at the bus stop and tries to approach some other teenage girls to try and make friends. However, when her stepbrother Andy, played by Billy Barrett, shows up and guides her away from the girls, he gets a look at them pulling faces making fun of her behind her back. He reassures her by saying that they did actually like her, and hides the truth from her to spare her feelings. He also asks where her cane is, and we can tell from this that he's very protective of her. We then get a flashback of Piper and Andy breaking into their home bathroom as their father is unresponsive in the shower. We then see his lifeless corpse laying there with vomit and blood around his mouth like it could have even been a drug overdose. It's unclear where their mother is, and it seems that Andy has already taken his position as an independent carer for Piper. We then cut to Andy and Piper in a foster care office being told by a lady named Wendy that they'll be split up. Piper will go to a foster mother named Laura who Wendy personally knows, and Andy will just go in his own separate unit. However, Andy doesn't want them to be split up as he cares for Piper and he doesn't want her to go off with a stranger. However, Laura said that she's not willing to take on any troubled teenagers. And upon saying this, Andy almost tries to hush up Wendy. Piper asks what they're talking about, and he says, "Oh, nothing." She says grapefruit, which is basically their code word to each other for when they want them to tell the truth. And he just says, "Oh, I got in trouble once a long time ago when I was young," but it's unclear what the incident was. They then agree to let Andy stay with Piper when she goes to Laura's for 3 months until he's 18, when he can then apply as an adult for legal guardianship. Upon talking whilst the movers pack up at their old house, Andy hears a plane and tells Piper it's their dad's spirit going to heaven. To offer her comfort, he lets her have one of the dad's pillows so she can still smell their dad on it, whilst they drive to their new foster mother's home. The shade is also down in the car, and Piper said previously that she can see light in certain colours or shapes, but not very well. Andy reaches across and pulls up the sun visor to allow sun to shine on Piper's face, making them both smile. There was a ton of heart in this film, and it's small moments like that that really make you feel invested in this connection they share. They pass a large white line on the floor upon approaching the property, acting as a salt ring, which circles the entire property's grounds and has much more sinister connotations than we understand yet. They knock on the door heavily, but Laura is blasting some loud, energetic music, maybe trying to give off some form of false impression that she's really fun and down with her kids. She runs straight to Piper and is all over her, but she doesn't give Andy the same kind of attention or care, intentionally making him feel left out when she takes a selfie and blocks Andy out of it by going on tiptoes. It's obvious that she favours Piper in this situation and would rather ignore Andy being there at all. She introduces Piper to their stuffed dog Pom Pom and jokes that she'll eventually stuff the cat soon when it goes, signifying that she may have a strange relationship with letting go of things after death. Andy notices that the carpet has been taped down at the edges, which is a known thing for people with visual impairment, and he says, "Is this for Piper?" But Laura says no, it was for her daughter who was also blind, but who died recently by drowning in their swimming pool. They go out to see the garden and the cat runs out before Laura shouts not to let the cat out. They then see a mysterious young boy standing in the empty pool grappling with a cat who is clawing and scratching to get away before Laura comes running out telling Ollie to leave the cat. When we then see Ollie's face, he has the exact same birthmark under his eye as the young girl from the ritual at the beginning. Laura tells him that Ollie lost his family and has been selectively mute since they lost Kathy. Piper asks what Ollie looks like. Andy lies and says that he's smiling at Piper right now, but he isn't. And Laura, seeing this, takes it even further and says he's got red curly hair, which seems to unsettle Andy that she's lying to Piper. Laura gives Piper Kathy's old room, which is very nicely decorated and welcoming, and just seems to par Andy off in a small room with no real bed or furnishing. Andy is then texting his friends to say that there's a kid here who's a real weirdo, and Laura comes in asking what he's texting about. She says that he's being very defensive with her, and she's clearly gaslighting and manipulating him from day one. He gets up to check on Piper through the wall. He quickly snatches the phone back off her, but then apologises, and she turns back saying, "So you think Oliver's a weirdo then?" Laura then starts to watch a VHS tape of the occult ritual we saw being recorded at the start of the film, showing that she has some intention of trying to copy it in some way, and Andy catches a glimpse of Laura and Ollie going out to the shed together after dark. Andy wakes up to find that he's wet the bed, however it's later shown that it's actually Laura intentionally pouring her own urine onto his lap when he's asleep to confront him with taking a shower, which he knows is triggering for him as he associates the shower with his father's death. At the funeral, Andy can't face looking at their father's body, and Piper asks what their dad looks like, and he says he looks good. Laura sees that he's lying, and to drive them apart, tells Piper that he didn't even look at their dad, forcing Andy to go back in and say goodbye properly. She also wants him to kiss his father goodbye, which he's very reluctant to. She also wants him to kiss him on the lips. He starts to hear the shower sound when he puts his head towards his father, which makes him start to panic uncontrollably, and you can tell Laura's reveling in his discomfort. Also, before when they were outside, Laura takes a little snipping of their dad's hair for some reason, but we'll find out for what later. Whilst they're at the funeral, Oliver is left home locked in a room. He's banging his hand against a window to try and get out, and eventually smashes through it with his bare hand, bleeding badly all over the garden. He seems to not even be fazed by the injury and just wanders off to the shed Laura showed him before. He's banging furiously on the door to try and get in, getting blood everywhere, until hearing the chicken coop and trying to get inside at the chicken. Laura says it should be a celebration, and they all start to party hard, but Laura wants Piper to also drink, which Andy seems reluctant against, having his protection of her tested. They eventually give in and get absolutely smashed, dancing, doing shots, and having what looks like a genuinely good time together. Piper passes out asleep, and Laura asks if Andy wants to talk about his dad. He states that their dad never touched Piper, but used to beat him really bad in secret, and used to use the sound of the shower to hide it. Laura says, "Is that why you hit Piper?" He seems shocked and asks how she knows about that, but she was maybe told about in Andy's file before they came. This was obviously the trouble he got into when he was younger that was mentioned in the file that he tried to keep quiet in front of Piper. He obviously feels very guilty about it, and Laura says that, "Was it because you were jealous of her, as she was your father's favourite?" Andy then crashed out. Laura sneaks into his room and pours the urine again on Andy's lap, takes his phone and starts to delete pictures of Oliver for some reason, like she doesn't want any proof of him existing. She then spots Oliver outside with a cat, like he's been out there all day long and she hasn't even thought to check on him. Treating his wounds in the bath, she questions whether she's doing the ritual right, and how is she supposed to know if he's even in there without showing her any signs? Upon which he looks at her and the taps burst on. And when she goes to look at the taps, she can hear Ollie imitating the cat. It's unclear whether he's eaten some of the cat's fur, but it's suggested that he can take on and imitate the things he eats. She then spots in the reflection of the steamed bathroom mirror, Oliver in a transformed bloody state with horns coming out of his head and bulging red eyes, before the mirror smashes entirely and Laura screams in fear. I've got to say I absolutely love that makeup and look. There's something so awesome about it. We only get a very brief flash of it, but it's very effective. The next morning, Andy takes his sheets to wash again, and Laura is waiting for him with Piper, and shows him up in front of Piper, embarrassing him, saying that he wet the bed, trying to get him to take a shower. Knowing that it's triggering for him, and he keeps seeing his father's body there, she then, out of earshot of Andy to Piper, says that he was aggressive with her last night, and she doesn't think he's well. Not being able to force himself to shower, Andy washes himself outside in the garden using the hose tap. He then sees Ollie slam his hand against a window to kill an insect, which he then eats. Andy, going upstairs to check on Ollie whilst Laura and Piper go shopping, realises that he's locked in the room. He lets Ollie out but tries to get him to speak. He won't speak, so he passes him a pad and paper and asks him to write something down. He writes one word: bird. Ollie is passed a piece of melon on the end of a sharp kitchen knife by Andy, and when Andy turns away, Ollie starts chewing down aggressively on both the kitchen knife and the melon, causing his teeth to chip and his gums to get shredded. Andy, in shock, tries to forcibly remove the knife, which Ollie won't let go of. The bit that really made me wince at this, there's a sharp jolt upwards with the knife, which splits him from the gums up to the base of the nose. Panicking, Andy drags Ollie outside to rush to the hospital, but Ollie is struggling to leave and wants to not pass the white salt line as if he's scared of it. Andy drags him over it, saying that they need to get to the hospital. What are you doing? And as soon as Oliver crosses that line, he screams in agony and starts to convulse on the floor while his stomach starts to pulse and twitch. Something then seems to suddenly change within Ollie, like he's out of a trance all of a sudden, and says his first line of the film, "Help me." Piper and Laurie pull up, and Laura is screaming in panic, saying, "Why is he outside? Why is he outside?" Not anything to do with is he okay or what happened or checking his injuries, just why is he outside? Laura quickly then watches the ritual videotape to find out how to cure someone who leaves the salt circle, and when she turns to Ollie, he looks at Laura almost crying, saying, "Who are you? What do you want?" It's almost like he was under a spell which he's now been snapped out of, being taken out of the circle. He starts to scream in panic, and she turns on some really loud music to hide Ollie's cries and puts her hand over his mouth, holding him down until she can figure out how to get him back to the trance state. She then rubs his forehead in circles until he eventually calms down. She then comes out and confronts Andy, saying, "So you break into my room? Respect my privacy." Even though she didn't respect his privacy, going through his phone multiple times. She takes Piper in the room with her and shuts Andy out, clearly trying to separate them. She then proceeds to feed Ollie the lock of hair of their dead dad that she took at the funeral. Andy then finally confronts the shower, but during it he sees his dad's corpse from behind the steamed glass, saying, "She'll die in the rain." Andy comes out to see if he's imagining it and slips on the wet floor, hitting his head and knocking himself out. His dad's face then quickly flashes to Ollie's. So it seems Ollie, being possessed by this unknown entity or demon, is able to imitate things it eats, and the lock of hair allowed him to show as Andy's father for a brief moment. Andy awakes in hospital and sees that it's raining outside, which he then starts to panic and tries to get out, saying she's gonna die, she's gonna die. We then cut to Laura ecstatic about the rain, watching water filling the pool up. One thing I didn't fully understand was that why it had to be rainwater. Wasn't there a way of just filling the pool up with water from the outside hose that Andy used earlier to wash with? Anyway, it seems her plan is finally coming together. Piper wanders into Laura's room while she's crying and watching a videotape of Kathy playing in the pool. Piper asks her to describe Kathy, and we for the first time really see how grief-stricken Laura really is and how much pain she's in. On the videotape of what seems to be a birthday party, Laura calls a young boy Oliver with ginger hair, and he replies, "Yes, Auntie Laura." This is our first indication that the red curly hair and name Ollie she described to Piper earlier isn't really anything to do with Ollie, and she got that description from her nephew. Then Laura visits Andy in hospital. He suffered a concussion and keeps asking where Piper is and not to let her out whilst it's raining as something had happened. Laura, playing innocent, says like what? Andy said that he saw his father in the shower, and he told her that Piper would die in the rain. Laura tries to hide a smile at this, almost feeling excited that she knows the plan is now coming together, and Ollie is fulfilling his purpose. She then for some reason quickly says to Andy under her breath, "I killed your father," making him turn round in shock and say, "What did you just say?" And then she goes on to something else. I believe here she's trying to manipulate him to hearing things, almost like she wants him to seem psychotic so that when it is legal guardianship time for him and Piper, he won't be suitable. Laura then says that Piper got him a present, a body spray, again which could be a dig at him for not taking a shower, but who knows. She promises to him multiple times that she'll keep her inside, and then it immediately jump cuts to them going outside in the rain to dance around the pool's edge together, showing that she just can't be trusted. Laura then starts to hold and caress Piper's face and hair, whilst it cuts back and forth to flashbacks of her doing the same with Kathy, showing that Laura has chosen Piper to be her vessel to bring Kathy back, as they share a lot of similarities. Laura gives Piper her daughter Kathy's favourite cardigan and says that she can start to call her mum if she likes, but Piper only says maybe. She says that when Andy turns 18, would she like to stay with Laura whilst Andy leaves, but Piper's loyalty to her brother is strong and she says that she still wants to have her own place with him. Ollie then enters behind them and opens the chest freezer in the shed. Laura then takes Piper's hand and makes her feel something in the freezer. It then zooms out to show that Kathy's body has been kept in a chest freezer in the shed for all this time. Laura then driving Andy back from the hospital is ranting about them letting him just leave after he's had a psychotic break. You can tell that she's angry that he's coming home, because she hasn't fully completed the ritual yet and she knows that Andy will get in the way of it. We see Laura sitting in her bedroom with Ollie, rubbing his head in a circular motion with the tip of her finger, whilst they both watch the instructions from the ritual videotape. It instructs to do 3 steps: imitate the death, consume the old body, and purge the soul into the new body. She's teaching the entity or demon within Ollie it's his purpose to eat Kathy's body in the freezer, then once Laura has drowned Piper in the pool to then purge the spirit of Kathy into Piper's dead body, bringing Piper back with the spirit of Kathy. To Finally separate Andy and Piper further, Laura sprays herself all over Andy's body spray and sneaks into Piper's room, punching her really hard in the eye, giving her a black eye. When Andy comes in the next morning, he asks what happened, and Laura blames it on Andy, saying that he's out of control with his hormones and testosterone, as he's into his weightlifting. Andy accuses Laura, and she keeps denying it in front of Piper, saying you're the only one strong enough to do this to her, and brings up the fact that their dad used to hit him, that's why he hit her. Piper, being surprised, says that Dad used to hit you, and Laura jumps in and says yeah, that's why he didn't save him, really creating a massive rift between them so Laura can win over Piper and she won't leave with Andy. Andy sees Ollie standing in his shorts covered in blood from his face down to his stomach, standing in the rain, and says, what happened to Ollie? And he starts to take his phone out to try and record it, and Laura tries snatching it out of his hands. But there's a really cool visual effect I like here. As the shot is only of Ollie through the window, the rain is distorting his face a bit, and you can almost see flashes of the horns coming from his head for split seconds, like the rain is running over them even if they're not there. I thought this was really effective, and I had to rewind it when I first saw it. Laura, struggling with Andy, falls to the floor crying in pain, knowing Piper can't see what's actually happening, and says that he attacked me. Andy is extremely angry and frustrated and just wants to leave, and Laura is intentionally provoking him until he lashes out at Laura and punches a hole through the wall next to her head. Laura acting it up, Piper ends up staying with Laura and comforts her whilst Andy storms off in the rain. He drives to their adoption office and says that he needs to speak to their caseworker Wendy urgently. Whilst waiting in the waiting room, he spots a missing child poster for a kid who looks exactly like Ollie called Connor Bird. Now we know why he wrote the word bird in the kitchen on the notepad. Laura takes Piper out of the house to a game of goal ball, which is for children who are also visually impaired. Ollie has gone wild and completely destroys the house, eating everything he can find, as if his hunger has become too much for him. His head has started to morph and protrude, as if the horns are forcing their way out from the inside. She says not yet, and he attacks her, biting a chunk out of her inner arm in the struggle, until she has to lock herself in a room and try and bandage the wound the best she can. Ollie screams at her through the door in Laura's own voice, get away, almost imitating and mocking her. As he just got a bite of her skin, I believe that's what makes him be able to imitate her. Whilst this is going on, Andy is telling Wendy the story that Laura has kidnapped this child. Did they not do any background checks on her? How do they even know who she is? Wendy says because she worked here as a counsellor for nearly 20 years, and she knows that Laura would never hurt a child. Again, you can also take this as meta-commentary about children not being listened to in the care system about abuse. Ollie then is even biting chunks out of a wooden table, destroying his teeth in the process, like he's fully gone and his appetite is just unstoppable. Even eating his own skin from his arm and hand, which is disgusting. Again, I really wouldn't ever suggest watching this while eating. I've also got to give props to the makeup and practical effects team here. All this disturbing imagery and body horror is extremely realistic and effective. Laura then, with her bloody hand, draws a circle on the glass window, drawing Ollie towards it whilst they stare at each other from either side, and she continues to draw circles in her blood. This seems to somehow get him back under control. She finally lets Ollie into the shed, who starts devouring Kathy's frozen body, whilst Laura can be heard screaming while watching on. Whilst Piper is busy playing goalball, Andy's leaving her a very heartfelt voicemail, saying although she thinks their dad was great, he was very abusive to Andy and hurt him a lot. He said he lied to her about their dad as he didn't want her to know how ugly the world was. He then admits on the phone that he hit her when he was 8 years old. He says something's wrong with Laura. Dad hid how evil he was from you, and now Laura's doing the same. However, Laura can be seen just listening to the voicemail on Piper's phone with a completely blank expression. She knows that they're on their way to question her, causing her to have to clean up and change extremely fast before they arrive as not to arouse suspicion. She comes to the door to speak to Wendy, who says that she needs to check it out. As Andy waits in the car, he decides to get out and check out the shed while Laura is distracted. He gets out, dropping the missing poster for Connor Bird outside of the house. Andy jumps the fence and breaks a window to get in the locked shed, where he finds Ollie eating the face of Kathy's frozen body. As Wendy is leaving, she spots that Laura's arm is bleeding, and she then hears Andy screaming for her in the distance, asking for her to come see what's happening in the shed. Wendy, alarmed, tries to leave, but Laura's gripping onto her, saying, "It's all okay, I'm doing something very special for Kathy here, we can bring her back." Laura at this point has gone fully insane, and a nice small detail, she's actually foaming at the corners of the mouth when she tells Wendy the plan and that Piper needs to die the same way Kathy did. She eventually breaks loose of Laura's hold and runs out the house. Upon them trying to leave, Laura runs them both down with her car at high speed, killing Wendy and badly injuring Andy. She then proceeds to get out of the car and push Andy's head under the water of a puddle until he stops breathing, which I have to say is incredibly sad as he was such a good and loving brother to Piper. I really didn't think that he'd die in this film the first time I saw it, and it really adds to the overall stakes of this entire plan Laura has hatched. She then goes and collects Piper from the sports centre whilst being very on edge, like this whole plan could fall apart at any moment. And something really tragic is, when Piper gets in the car, you see her through the smashed windscreen, and not even a few minutes ago the car was used to kill her brother and she's completely unaware of it. After they get home, Piper is unable to see the chaos and blood around her in the house, but she gets a sense that something isn't quite right after she hears Andy's voice from upstairs calling her but saying nothing else. She goes up and feels Ollie's face whilst very distorted and scabby. She asks Laura who that is, and she says, "That's Ollie." She said that she thought she heard Andy's voice coming from this room, and she guides Piper away, and Piper asks, "What colour hair does Ollie have again?" And she says, "Red and curly." Knowing she just felt a shaved head, she now knows that Laura's been lying to her for God knows how long, and makes a run for it. She locks herself in the bathroom and finds Andy's body on the floor, knowing it's him by touching his braces. Almost like some sick kind of cycle, which again the circles in the film could represent. She's now found her brother's body by the shower like she did her father's. She shouts for him to wake up and is shouting, "Grapefruit, grapefruit." Laura says that she's spoken with an angel that she's put inside Ollie, and now she's going to put Kathy inside Piper. She admits she needs to drown her in the pool now, and Piper tries to flee. After a struggle, Piper knocks herself out after running into a pole, and Laura drags her out to the pool and starts to submerge her whilst Ollie watches on waiting for his time to purge Kathy's soul. There's a lot of screaming and struggling from Piper, and you can tell it's having an effect on Laura greatly. She's trying to look away and almost crying, begging Piper to just let her do this. And when Piper comes up, she screams the word mum, which shocks Laura into completely stopping her plan. We then get a very sad flashback of Laura having to save Kathy's body from the pool, holding Piper in her arms with Kathy's cardigan on. Saying the word mum snaps her out of this, and she starts to embrace her, but Piper manages to get free and escape. Ollie runs after Piper, who knees him in the stomach, forcing Ollie to throw up the soul of Kathy onto the ground, as he can't contain it or hold it any longer. He then wanders to the edge of the salt ring, where he sees a missing poster of himself, Connor Bird, forcing himself to step outside the ring, finally get rid of the Tari demon that's been holding him captive all this time. Laura climbs out of the pool, disgraced with herself, and she takes Kathy's body, rips open her arm wound again, and then lays in the pool curled up to Kathy's body bleeding out, wanting to be together in death with her. We then see a long slow zoom out shot with the authorities finding them in the pool, and also Connor is found crying and returned to his actual self now. Piper manages to flag down a car and get a ride from a concerned couple, and at the traffic lights she hears a plane overhead and smiles, thinking about what Andy said earlier about getting a plane to heaven. Whilst this is happening, we also hear Andy's voicemail to Piper that she missed earlier in the film, telling her the truth and that he loved her. It's a really sad scene with a beautiful score. Nearly all of the emotional scenes within this movie made me well up. It's got a really big heart at its core, no matter how gory or gruesome it is. And you believe in Andy and Piper's bond, or Laura's grief so strongly that things like this are gut-wrenching and heartbreaking to endure. So that's my breakdown and analysis of Bring Her Back. Again, I have to say it's my favourite film of the last few years, horror or otherwise. It's an uncomfortable slow burn of psychological torment, but with great depth and emotion at its very core. Bring Her Back will definitely stay with you for weeks after watching. It's easily one of the most impactful horror films of the last decade at least. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, I really do appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed my explanation of the story. If you have, please leave a like, a comment, share with your friends, and consider subscribing to the channel for all future content, as all feedback helps this channel move forward greatly. Thank you again. Until next time, I've been your host, JB Twinesiger.